Hey gang, Rob here from Rob's Retro Garage. If this is your first time here, then welcome. If it's not your first time here, then welcome back. I'm glad to have you. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to remove this spindle and the upper and lower control arms, and I'm going to get that spring out of there as well, and the shock absorber. So here's how this is going to go. And well, first let me point out that this is original to the car. This rotor is 40 some odd years old, 44, 45, 46 years old, something like that. 97, 97, 2007, 17. 27 would be 50 years. It's 23, so 46 years old. And the way that I know that it's original is it's riveted on. They did that in the factory. So here's how we're going to remove this thing. I'm going to do it in a particular order. I'm going to start by, sorry, I hurt my back the other day, and it's bothering me a little bit. I'm going to remove the shock absorber. I'm going to take that top nut off, and then there's two nuts underneath holding it on. We'll take that shock out. Then I'll remove the sway bar bushings. That should be fairly easy to do. There's not really any pressure on those. So I'll remove those. And I'll go over here and I'll use a special tool to pop the bushings out here from the tie rod. And then I'll take a spring compressor tool and I'll put it through where the shock absorber was, and I will compress that spring upwards, and that'll take the pressure off of this thing. So then I can take this castle nut off and remove the cotter pin that's in there, and unscrew that castle nut, and the spindle will drop, and then I can ow, that hurts. And then I can slowly release the pressure off of the spring, which will eventually it'll pop and it'll come out, but most of the pressure will have been released off of it at that point. And I'll probably wind up taking, just to be safe, I'll probably wind up taking this strap, which can hold up to 400 pounds, and putting it through there before I start to lower the spring. Actually, before I start to compress the spring, I'll do that and get it in place because I have a Honda S2000 right behind me, and it's kind of blocked in right now, so I can't, I'm not going to take the time to get it out, but I'm going to secure that spring so that it doesn't go shooting across the room and fly into my S2000. So that's what I'm going to do. So let's get started taking this thing apart. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to take this, I don't know why it's not focusing. There we go. I'm going to take the head off for the shock absorber. Okay guys, we're back under the car again. This is on the other side. The front forward side of the driver's side front tire. And I'm going to remove this link here, and I'm also going to take out those two bolts, which will release the shock. I already got the bolt at the top. That was really easy to get off, so it makes me worry about what's going to be really hard to get off next. But I'm going to take them off and we'll be back. Okay guys, so I got that one out and I got that one out. Those are 1/2. That's a 1/2 inch socket on my car that got those out. And then you can see the shock just dropped right out. But again, those screws, which are, gosh, it's dirty under there, which is right there and right there, are 1/2 inch socket screws. Okay guys, this is about out. You're gonna need 1 wrench at the top, and you're gonna need 1 wrench at the bottom, because this entire shaft here is one long screw. It's a threaded screw inside a housing. So you need to put 1 screw on the, or 1 wrench on the top, 1 wrench on the bottom to hold it, and pick a side and remove it from that side. And I'm removing it from the bottom. I'm just holding it at the top, and it's coming off pretty easily. And it's a 9/16 on both ends. On my car, a 1977 Corvette, it's 9/16 there, and it's 9/16 down there. So again, if you want to see how this goes back together, this piece, I don't know if I can do this with one hand holding the camera, but this piece slides right on there. Like that. And then I've got to have this little metallic washer. Goes right there. So that's the bottom, and the bottom half of that trailing arm should go right between those 2 pieces, right? And then we have this piece, the solid covering part of the shaft. And if I can make it on there, there it goes, it slides right on, just like that. Then we take this second half. Can't do this with one hand. Scheisse. All right. So the second part slides right on like that, and then that goes right on top of it. I think that's how it went together. It may go, yeah, it goes like that, because that fits along the bottom right there. And then this piece, of course, goes on the top. And then we have the nut that sits right there. So that's how that fits together. Okay, so for the tie rod, that's a castle nut, and I don't know if you can see that very well, but that's got a cotter pin in it. So I need to remove the cotter pin and then take that castle nut off. And then I have a special tool that will drive that bushing out, or not bushing, but the it'll separate the tie rod from, or the little, I don't know that it's called a pitman arm, but it looks kind of like a pitman arm, that will separate that from the tie rod. Also, so you'll know, that castle nut is an 11/16. An 11/16 socket is what goes on that, on my car, the 1977 Corvette. All right, and this is what I'm going to use to get this trailing arm off. It goes on, especially made for this. So this part right here that my finger's tapping against goes on the top of the screw, and then this bottom part fits between the arm and that bushing. And then you just put a ratchet on that, and it pushes the top arm up, forcing the screw down, and it separates the pitman arm. And it's going to be very violent when it does it. As Ben Friend would say, violent but effective. That's the Corvette Ben, if you don't know. His channel is where I watched how to do this. I learned how to do this. So that's what we're gonna do. We'll separate it, and I'll come back when I'm ready to separate it, so you can see the fireworks. By the way, if you don't have one of these, you can buy one of these from Amazon. I'll try to remember to link the box that I got down here, but it was like 30 bucks for this, and ball joint pullers and pressers and all sorts of good stuff. So I'd rather buy it and have it than to have to rent it and worry about taking it back. But just so you know, this is a 7/8. 7/8 fits right on there. So we'll hook that up, and we'll get this thing separated. I think I want to be right behind that thing. There it goes. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention to you that I'm going to take off is this thing right here. This is a bumper stop for the spring. So I'm going to remove this to make it easier to get that spring out. And there's a bolt here, and there's a bolt under there. And if you give me a minute, I'll come back and tell you what size bolt it is that, or what size socket it is that takes that out. Okay guys, well there they are. There's the shock and its bushings. There's the bushing right behind the wheel spindle and in front of the coil spring. It just makes it easier to get stuff out. And that's the trailing arm bushing. So anyway, they're out. So now the next step is to compress the coil. I got a tool to do that with. We'll compress the coil, and we'll remove the spindle from the upper and lower control arms. I've got my, as you can see, I've got my coil spring compressor tool there. It's under that spring, and it's under that one. And if you look, you'll see there's two bolts on the bottom half of the compressor. The lower spring is the left one, so left is lower, and the shorter spring is on the right, and that's higher. Now I did not use the second half of this. I'm using it up there as a sort of a lever for this thing. I'm just going to compress the whole spring against the frame with this compressor tool, and it'll get every one but the bottom ring. So we're going to do that, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to bust this loose. I'm going to take this down to about half of the length of the thread, so I can get that to focus. Take that cotter pin out, and then move that castle nut down to right about there. And then I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to take, if I can get it in frame, I'm going to take that cotter pin out, and then I'm going to lower this about half the length of the thread, so that when I hit this thing and it falls, it doesn't completely come off. And that coil spring should be held up in there, so then I can jack this up a little bit, maybe on the frame, and get the A-arm and the spindle to drop down. Now, as for the spindle, I drilled out the rotors, or drilled out the rivets on the rotor, but the rotor doesn't want to come off, and I don't have a punch to punch those out yet. So I'm just going to take the rotor and the spindle off as one unit, and then I'll try and get some leverage on those. I'll buy the right punch and see if I can't just drive those out, maybe outside on the concrete somewhere, and we'll get those out. Well, it's out. Yay me! That's as decompressed as it decompressed can be. But even with the coil spring compressor on it and the A-arm down, and I fully released the compressor, sorry, I was making it blurry there. I was focusing on my finger. Even with the spring compressor in there, all the way to the very bottom, there was still tension on this. So when it hit the bottom and I unscrewed it and the bottom part fell off, this whole thing went bang. And then, you like how I did that? I'll recreate it again. Bang! And it came right off. But it still had some tension on it, so it wanted to pop out. So now I need to get this arm off. I loosened that one already, so it wasn't like that before. It wasn't that gap before. I need to get my bar to pry that one loose. But the main reason for me making this this video is so I can document how many shims are in there. And it looks like there's 1, 2, 3 shims, and then that metal plate. And over here, it looks like there's two shims and the metal plate. So there's 2 shims on the forward driver's side, and there's 3 shims, 3 shims right there on the rear of the driver's side. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and remove that upper one, and then I'll work on the lower one. Hey guys, well, we're under the car now. This is the driver's side. This is the lower control arm for the driver's side. There are 3 bolts on here, 1, 2, 3. This one is a 7/8, and this one and the one on the other side over there are 5/8. You get those 3 off, and this control arm will drop, and it'll just come right down. And yeah, so, and also there's a little chunky plug right there that's going to come out too, that these are both screwed into. So and as you can see, I've still got the rotor and the spindle attached to it, so we'll get those off after we get this A-arm out from under the car. All right, folks, well, it's off. There's the upper control arm, of course the coil spring, the lower control arm. We got the 7/8 bolt there and the 2 5/8 bolts, and the little shim that goes there. And then I've got the entire spindle with the rotor off, and I'll put PB Blaster on those 2 bolts there. So tomorrow I'm gonna try and take those off. But this thing, might be a tad concerned about it, because that looks like rust hole right there. See where it looks like it's eaten the top half of the hole versus the one over there. Well, that doesn't look a whole lot better, but that's where the spring pocket is. That's where the spring sits. So I've got to get that apart somehow. Now this one is just beat up, but I can make that look nice. We can clean it, wire wheel it, put some POR 15 on it, because that's just surface rust. I mean, to me that looks very reusable once I get it cleaned up. And I've got the bolts for those in the bag over there. Let's take a look at the underside of this one. Well, that doesn't look so bad on the underside. I'm sorry, that's the hole right there. That's the hole right there. So it doesn't look so bad there. But it looks bad on the other side. And those are two screw holes that attach the shock. And the other castle nut for that ball joint popped off and went somewhere, and I'm not sure where it went to, so that's going to be a treasure hunt in the basement. But all in all, I think that's a pretty good job for the day.